Alrighty, so today we're going to do the season preview of the Philadelphia Union. And as I said before in the moving forward series, when I talk about the Philadelphia Union, this might be the last year. We might see this current core that of players that they currently had, and that they seems like they're going to be running it back once more time heading into this season. But this might be it for them because there's going to be some big decision that they have to make in the next off season, and guys in this roster could potentially sold off to Europe for a good amount of money, which, for the Union, that's what they want to do. I mean, the Union is a prime example of a team that able to develop with talent and also able to scout some hidden gems and able to develop them in a way where they can definitely sell them off for a big amount of money, and then it's rinse and repeat. But you got to say, in terms of this current core, this probably is the last chance for them to win an MLS Cup, and that I think they are pretty much in the same situation as what we saw with NYCFC in 2021, where I mentioned, it doesn't really matter what happened in the regular season. Like the regular season, I'm pretty sure Union fans will definitely enjoy that they have a good season, but the judgment part of the season will definitely be in the playoffs and maybe even in the CONCACAF Champions Cup too, because I think besides the fact that I know a lot of Union fans are focusing on winning MLS Cup, don't forget about the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they definitely want to get themselves back into the semifinal, which the last time they were in, and really the last two times that they in this competition, they got stuck in the semifinal stage. Now, in terms of last season, they finished with 15-10-9 record and finished with 55 points. Last playoff appearance, 2023. Last playoff round wins, 2023 as well. But MLS Cup, yeah, that's the thing that they've been chasing really for the past couple of years. And yeah, it really pains Union fans of seeing that the word never there. And I even put a sad face there because, again, this team came so close so many times. Like, again, I hate to bring it up, but that game against LAFC in that 2022 MLS Cup, well, we will remember as the greatest MLS Cup final we'll ever see. Yeah, unfortunately, Union fans would not want to remember that, as they were on the wrong end of a classic MLS Cup final that will be remembered for a very long time. Now, in terms of some of the signings that they had, now, despite the fact that they are kind of running back with the current core, they have definitely made some reinforcement, albeit some of these reinforcement are kind of underwhelming. They got Isaiah LaFleur from Houston Dynamo too, and then just announced today that they have got Marcus Anderson from a Norwegian team, and apparently he played like in the third tier. It's kind of like a random guy from the Norwegian league. But there's one thing about the Philadelphia Union is that they're somehow able to find these hidden gems that nobody expect them to do well in MLS, and little do we know that they started to do well. And I think that's partially due to how good Ernest Tanner is in terms of his scouting and signing these players, but also how good Jim Curtin is. I mean, Jim Curtin, I've said many times that he is considered to be easily the top three best head coaches in the league, and this is why, in terms of his head coaching tree, so far, part of his head coaching tree has done relatively well, and we already seen what FC Cincinnati has got the best reward out of that coaching tree with getting Pat Nolan and the former assistant GM of the Union, Chris Albright, doing a good job for Cincinnati. That's the thing why the Union has been so good in terms of not only finding these hinge gem, but also have a head coach that is able to develop a player to a level that nobody expect them to be an MLS quality player. Then they of course got Sanders Gilmo and Jameer Bradizio. And again, all these players, I would not be surprised if they're going to be turns out to be a great player for this team, because that's what the Union does. It's not just about the academy that has that great pipeline to produce some good young talent, but they also have got guys that could easily they sign overseas, and most of the time it turns out to be a hit. Now, in terms of players that is no longer with this team, now one the rare time that they actually miss on a signing is Andres Pereira. And unfortunately, I think Pereira, as much as I still think he's a great player, and I think NYCFC will get a huge benefit of getting him out right now. He just really never fit in the Union system and the way that Jim current play. So yeah, obviously he's no longer with the team. You also got Richard Odata, Nelson Pierre, and then I put Alejandro Bedoya in a question mark because again, as I mentioned in the last News of the Week episode, there's still some speculation of whether or not if Bedoya is coming back or not. I heard rumors. It feels like it's 50-50 right now. I know Jim Curtin have basically said that he is going to come back for this season. But again, we still don't know if that indeed is going to be the case. And this is huge for the Union too, because as I said before, while Bedoya, he is definitely in the twilight of his career. His leadership and locker room presence is what fuel this Union team. So if they can bring him back one more year, especially with I said about this current core, maybe running him back one more year, that will really help this Union team to potentially finally conquer the mountain of winning an MLS Cup. But they also let go of their backup goalkeeper Joe Bandig and Anton Sorensen as the remaining player that left this Philadelphia Union team. Now, in terms of their preseason schedule, they're actually already halfway in the preseason schedule, and this is kind of going to be the case as we get into talk about other teams where they already play half and even into 2/3 of the preseason schedule. And so far, it's been mixed result. They did lose 2-0 in their first preseason game against Flamengo before drawing 1-1 against Austin FC. They did win 3-1 against NYCFC, and then they got two really good team remain in the preseason. They got FC Cincinnati and New England Revolution to round up the last two games in the preseason schedule. Now, once the preseason schedule is over, they are going to be once again back in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and just like what we saw in their first triumph in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the first opponent is going to be Deportivo Saprissa. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how they will do. I mean, I'm interested to see how both of these teams play. Like, if there's one thing I remember the last time both of these teams play against each other, they do not like each other whatsoever. So yeah, leg one is going to be on February 20th, and then leg two is going to be in Philly. It's going to be them against Saprissa on the 27th. And again, in terms of MLS team in their first round matchup, unfortunately, I think the Union definitely get one of the tougher draw. Obviously, Vancouver got the toughest draw. I'll have to play against Tigres, but Saprissa is still a good team in Costa Rica, albeit not as well as they used to, because I've heard Alajuelense say it started to be the more dominant team in Costa Rica, but Saprissa is still a good team, especially in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that I'm interested to see how this is gonna play out, especially with how heated it was last time both of these teams play out against each other. Now, when you look at the first 10 game for the Union, so in between the two-legged affair that they had against Saprissa, they are going to open the season against the Philadelphia Union. And then this is where it gets really interesting in terms of the Union schedule. So, whoever make the Union schedule, it feels like they just want them to play all their Western Conference straight away, because pretty much all of the Western Conference team that they're going to be playing is going to be within their first 10 games. In fact, it's going to be within 9 games, where they actually are going to be playing 5 straight teams that is going to be from the Western Conference. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a team has gone through a stretch where they play 5 straight games where they play against team from the other conference. But it started off with them playing against Sporting KC, then they play at home against the Seattle Sounders, then they go on the road to play against Austin before going on the road to play against Portland Timbers, and then they finish this very interesting 5 game stretch where they played the Western Conference with them playing against Minnesota at home, and then they of course play Nashville SC on the road, and that could have been 6 if Nashville was still in the West. And then they play Atlanta on the road before finish up their Western Conference opponent of the season on April 27th against RSL. I don't think there's any team that finished playing their interconference that early than the Philadelphia Union is. I mean, after 9 games, they pretty much played all of their Western Conference team, and then they of course finishing the first 10 game with them playing on the road against DC. And that, yeah, it's kind of interesting in terms of the beginning part of the schedule. There's definitely some tough games that is going to be out there, especially in the beginning. It's going to be interesting because Sporting KC and Seattle, that should pose an interesting test. And then even in April, that also is an interesting schedule too, going on the road to play against Nashville and Atlanta. But speaking of tough schedule, this is where it kind of gets even tougher for the Union, because when you look at their post Leagues Cup schedule, yeah, it gets really tough. They start off with playing against the defending MLS Cup champion, the Columbus Crew, at home before going on the road play against the Red Bulls, and then they play Messi and friends on the road against Inter Miami before going on the road again, this time playing against NYCFC. Then they play against DC United at home, but then this is where the murderous row begin. They start with them playing at home against Atlanta United, but they have to go on the road, play against Orlando, and then have to go on the road to play against the defending MLS Cup champion, that is the Columbus Crew. So they get Columbus very late in the season. And then we of course have the Union East versus Union West derby between them and FC Cincinnati on decision day. And depending on how things are gonna be, and especially if both of these teams maybe are chasing for supporter shield standings, I'm pretty sure the whoever make the schedule realized that yeah, both of these teams could potentially be chasing supporter shield kind of standing. So why not make them play against each other on decision day? That should be a very interesting matchup. Or maybe it could be one of the dullest matchup where both of these teams already have their playoff spots secure and the seeding doesn't really matter. I mean that's why when you're the schedule maker, made these decision day game, you kind of hope that, I mean, as much as you want to make some interesting matchup, but you also want to make sure that you don't make an interesting matchup that turns out to be kind of meaningless because both of these team maybe have already clinched the playoffs and don't really have any seeding or home field advantage to play for. But we'll see if that, of course, is the case in their final game against Cincinnati. Because again, as I said before, I think that could be also a preview of what we'll see in the playoffs, or even a preview of the Eastern Conference Final, if I might say. And then when we look at the strength of this team, obviously, the Union, I think one of the biggest strengths of this team, and this has been the case for the past couple of years, they're a very well-rounded team. I mean, there's really no weakness when you look at this team when they put out their best starting 11. I mean, on the attack, we know the big three with Carranza, Gastak, and Uru. In the midfield, they're very strong too, with a couple of good youngsters there. And then in defense, very good as well. The Elliott and Glesnes center back partnership is strong as ever. And then, of course, Kai Wagner decided to return for another go around, which I think that was kind of a little surprising because we thought that he was gonna leave, but he looks like he's gonna be staying for at least for the foreseeable future, and that, keep in mind he is going to be, I think, suspended for another game because of the thing that he did during the playoff. And then let's also not forget about Bizo on the other end, a very good underrated fullback there on the other side. And then they obviously have one of the most consistent goalkeeper, and Andre Blake, a guy that pretty much have won goalkeeper of the year almost every single season except for last year when Roman Berkey beat him to that spot. But obviously, the weakness for this team, and you probably know what the weakness of this team is. It's about getting over the hump. It's about these big games that the Philadelphia Union has, where no matter how good this team is, that narrative of them unable to get over the hump and just kind of crack under the pressure is what is the biggest weakness of this team. And unless if they can finally do so, and unless if they can finally win that elusive MLS Cup, there's definitely going to be a legacy of failure kind of montage about the Philadelphia Union because of the way that, besides the supporter shield that they won, they have not won anything, despite of the good success that they had. And I don't want to say the word big game choker in terms of the Union as a label, but I mean, it's kind of hard not to say it, especially when you look at all these games that they have and all these chances that they can potentially win trophies, and they're unable to do so because they just can't get over the hump, and they just kind of fall apart at the worst time possible. So yeah, it's all about getting over the hump. That is the big weakness of this team, and especially when you have a game where it's kind of all or nothing. Yeah, that's when this team just kind of crack under the pressure, and that's going to be something that they got to have to solve because it's pretty obvious that what's the expectation of this season, it's got to be MLS Cup. I mean, and I even wrote this is the last chance with this group. Like this is it. They have to win MLS Cup this year. It doesn't really matter how far they would go if they do not live MLS Cup by the end of December. It's another failure of a season, and this is where maybe you might start to see some drastic change where some of these players might get sold off, and maybe they might have to do a soft reset because they might think that this is the group that just can't get it over the hump. But let me know in the comments below if you're a Union fan. What do you think of this season preview? And again, no pressure in terms of how this team will perform this season. But the expectation, we know that there are some teams that have high expectation, and this is also where, as much as I said that, they have to win MLS Cup and it's a failure, the difficult part about this is the fact that they are in an Eastern Conference that I feel like this year the Eastern Conference might be the strongest I've ever seen. Doing my time covering MLS, I mean there is just so many good teams I can think of this season in the Eastern Conference that can really go for the title, and I'll mention it even throughout my season preview of these Eastern Conference teams that it's kind of hard to predict. How which one is going to do, and this is why I said last year it's going to be a bloodbath again once they get into the playoffs, and the Union are hoping they will survive that bloodbath and get themselves to MLS Cup, because I think it's safe to say that just like last year where we say how whoever made it to MLS Cup out of the East looks like they're probably going to win it. It feels like it could be the same way again, and the Union is hoping that they can do so. But as I said before, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this season preview? And if you're a Union fan, what is your strength, your weakness, and your obvious expectation is going to be with this team? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.